Welcome back to another episode all about implementable strategies that you can put into your life and your business today that are going to help you make more money in real estate, sell more houses in real estate without burning out. Sounds like magic. So on this episode, I thought it might be kind of fun to just talk about it's interesting. I've been in real estate now for almost 15 years, and I have a team of over 30 agents. And, I talk to a lot of agents about like what's happening in their career, what they're experiencing. And I hear this a lot. I'm either, I wish I had more business because I'm going broke, and hopefully we can help solve that problem. Or, I finally have business and now I'm stressed out and I feel like I'm going to burn out and I don't know if I can keep doing this, and I've been in that position myself multiple times. And so, this podcast is really aimed at, and I thought today what we could address is how do we battle burnout? Like, what does it actually look like? What are some tips and strategies that you can implement today to help you become more resilient? Because if we think about it, resiliency is really just the opposite of burnout. And so if we're talking about battling burnout, rather than focusing on what we don't want, if we focus on what we do want, then we start focusing on resiliency. So I remember, I'll just share a quick story. There's really two big moments in my real estate career where I feel like I burned out. The first one was before I really started doing any of this work, before I had any coaches in my ear, before I was really learning about myself and about how to be a productive business person. I got out of education to get into real estate to make money because I was tired of being broke as an educator, and got into real estate, started doing fix and flips, and lost multiple six figures in the first 4 years. And as somebody who was already lacking confidence, and as somebody who didn't spend a lot of time learning how to battle the victim mentality, it took me to a really dark place. And it took me to, I was in a very dark place. But and I'll share more about that story over time. But in that moment where I was in my lowest, I remember sitting on the bed and just with my head in my hands, just like, I don't know how I'm ever going to go on. And in one moment, I was the biggest victim I had ever been in my entire life. I was ready to give up on myself, give up on my family, give up on everything. And in the next moment, I had this realization that it doesn't have to be this way. I don't have to be like that. I can do this differently. I can do it better. And in an instant, I went from, complete victim to like, no, I'm not going to let this keep me down. And over the next 10 years, I developed a lot of strategies. I learned a lot of strategies from other people that helped me move forward. And so what ended up happening was, in the place of victimhood, I was completely defeated. There was nothing I could do to make my life better or make my business better. But when I switched my mindset to there's got to be a different way that I can do this, and I started developing skills of resiliency, all of a sudden my business skyrocketed. So much so that by the time I got to 2020, I had my best year yet. And I was so busy that it's all I did was work. And I didn't really fully understand this idea of burnout until 2020. And that's when I was like, I am done. I don't want to work another day in my life. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And so that was the next phase. I had to move on and figure out new strategies to become resilient in the face of a completely different type of burnout. But here's the thing that I learned from both of those situations. Well, there's a couple things. Number one, it amazes me what used to stress me out compared to what I'm able to handle today without it even affecting me. 20 deals 10, 12 years ago would have felt like I was lifting the world. And today, that's like Tuesday, right? I mean, it's just so much easier to handle these things. And so it's amazing to me how much more we can take on when we develop these skills of resiliency and when we practice these skills. But number two, the thing that I learned is that this is a practice. Had I stayed in the victim mentality, I probably wouldn't be here today. I definitely wouldn't have the business that I have, and I wouldn't have the relationships in the business that I wouldn't have the team, I wouldn't have any of these things. And so I'm a big believer in resiliency. That's why I'm a big believer in resiliency, because it saved my life. It saved my business. And it puts our family in a position to be able to do some really, really, really cool things. And so that's why I'm so excited to be here with you guys, sharing some of our experiences and some of the things that we've learned so that you can do the exact same thing.
Well, if you guys don't know, I'm Dan. I'm Allison, Dan's wife. And over the years, we've been married for 20 years. And over the years, watching Dan be in real estate, I have seen the ups and downs. I've seen it all. And I've seen him where he's gone through times in his life where he has been extremely stressed out. And so I had to find a way to also become resilient and support him, as well as allow for him to have his moments of figuring things out as well. And
Like tantrums.
yes, your tantrums. And so from my perspective, I actually just got into real estate almost about a year ago. I had a private practice in psychotherapy, and so I had my own business and was working through my own resiliency in that. But I would have to say that as you were talking, it brings up the idea of becoming aware, I think. Like really becoming aware of like, oh my gosh, I'm in burnout. I think that's the first thing to recognize with resiliency, is to become aware of the situation, of what's not working, and to really like face that, because we can pretend that it's just, this is just how we are. And if we are not willing to look at what's happening, we're not willing to then, maybe we're not willing to change, because that sounds really scary. Because resiliency actually is also about change, and it's very dynamic, it's very layered. So with this podcast that we're beginning and we're going to start into and grow, there's going to be a lot of different conversations around different kinds of topics that have to do with resiliency.
Yeah. Well, and I think you really hit on I would say the first, in my opinion, the first and most fundamental piece of battling burnout or developing resiliency is number one. I haven't noticed that people have a hard time admitting that they're in burnout. I feel like most people are like, oh, it's almost like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I'm
Absolutely.
so burned out. I've got so much going on. Like, it must mean that I'm, doing a good job or something like that. So I don't think that there's a problem with admitting that we have burnout. I think where the wheels really start to come off, and this is what I see the most, and this is what I have experienced myself, is that it's in that moment of understanding, okay, something's not working, something's not right. What am I going to do about it? And so for me, if I had to put like the crux of the most important part of burnout, I would say that it has to do with our choices. See, because it was in that story that I shared, when I'm sitting on my bed with my head in my hand, the coolest part about that is it was the yin and the yang. It was the absolute darkest moment of my entire life, yet it was the turning point for my entire life and my entire career. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. But the only reason that it was a blessing was because in that moment, I literally heard, you know, a voice tell me, you need to make a choice. It's decision time. What are you going to do? You going to keep crying or are you going to stand up? And it was a challenge. And I was just like, wait, it was like, wait, what am I doing? It's like I woke up from a dream and I'm like, okay, screw that. I will not be the victim anymore. And so the reason that I share that story is because it was in the choice that it went from the darkest moment to one of the lightest. So, so kind of coming back to this, like, how do we develop resiliency? Yes, identify where you're at and then make a choice. That's where the power really begins.
That's where the beginning begins, because
Yes.
the choice is going to be the lever or the doorway, the hinge that allows for us to walk through to the next stage or the next thought or the next thing that we're going to do to create the resiliency. And so so yeah, going back to it, it's like awareness and choice. And then also having action steps, because I think we can get into this place where it's like, okay, I'm aware and I'm going to make that choice. And then we get sucked back into the old thought pattern or the old habit that we, it's like if the habit of maybe doing the thing that isn't creating resiliency, like the habit of maybe it's just in that thought pattern, like, this is so hard, like I can't do this anymore. And so, to be able to create an action step, and one of the things that you can do is, and this is just one tool, would be to create a micro habit. So it's like, okay, I have the choice to do something different. Now, what am I going to do about it? And so maybe I create a micro habit to get myself to make all of those calls that I need to make to get more clients or to create more business.
Yeah, okay, but that all sounds fine and dandy, right?
Okay.
But how do you actually do that? So, for example, my story that I repeated to myself, and by the way, a belief is just a story that we repeat to ourselves over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. A belief is not a fact. A belief is a belief. And so I created beliefs within myself that this is so hard. I can't do this. Here we go again. I'm failing again. This is so hard. I can't do this. Okay, so I would imagine some people listening to this or watching this, they can relate to those stories, right? They hear themselves saying, okay, great. So now what? What do you do about it? How do you actually get in there and break those stories to create something that's more powerful that develops resiliency?
Yes. So can we go back to what I was saying about can you help bridge the gap a little bit? Or I guess maybe you just did I was talking about action steps in terms of creating, I guess, business. And that wasn't necessarily creating resiliency, I think, is what you're trying to say.
No, what I'm saying, if we can break those stories, listen, if I'm trying to sell a bunch of houses, and once again, I've been there. I tried to sell houses when I was telling myself this is too hard and it'll never work. And guess what? It was really hard and it didn't work. And when I finally said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I don't feel like I have the skill sets quite yet, and I don't have the confidence quite yet, but I refuse to quit and I refuse to be the victim. I'm just going to keep moving forward. All of a sudden I started generating business. And so that's how it helps us create more business, right? Is when we change the way we speak to ourselves, we change our actions. And when we change our actions, we change our life and we change our business. Like that's how the snowball kind of goes. What I'm saying is when somebody has a repetitive cycle going on in their head, what is a strategy that they can implement to reframe that story or belief that may not be true?
And so that would be creating a new story, a new reframe where they can step into this new story. And it might sound...
So how do they do that? Like I'm asking you, how does somebody reframe a story?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm going there. I'm going there. So how to reframe a story is to, first of all, see the story as it is. And then to create, it's like having an intention or seeing it in a different, how do you want it to be different? Like how do you want your life to be different? And how can you possibly see or envision or wish? So it's like creating that wish or that vision, and then being able to have a new thought to replace that. And that is very difficult. I mean, I've been listening to Joe Dispenza, and he's been talking about how to create these new thoughts, and it is uncomfortable. I mean, that's the other thing that I think that is important to bring up to listeners is that resiliency is not comfortable. it can be, there are phases and spaces where it's the unknown, because what you've been doing is kind of the pattern of how you've been operating. And so to be able to switch into a new thought feels really weird and kind of awkward. And so to begin a new thought, that's part of the first stage, is to just replace what is the thought that isn't working, and then where do you want to go, how do you want to be, and to be able to envision that and then create a thought that's going to mimic the vision of where you want to be. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a couple things to note here. It's interesting because yes, building resiliency and doing those kinds of things, it is difficult because you have to get uncomfortable. You have to look at yourself objectively. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, you're screwing X, Y, and Z up, and that's okay. And now we're going to do this, this, and this. That's uncomfortable. But you know what's more uncomfortable than that? Being flat freaking broke because you can't sell any houses. You know what's more uncomfortable than that? Hating your life. You know what's more uncomfortable than that? Burning out hardcore. You know what's more uncomfortable than that? Being depressed. So if you ask me, we're going to be uncomfortable one way or the other. Why not be more uncomfortable in the way that's going to move us forward and drive us towards a vision for our life? And when we go back to reframing, I just want to kind of give some real world applications of how to do that. So, like Allison said, we've got to find. So here's the story. So eventually we got to pick out the story. And all you got to do to pick out the story is, you know, when things get tough or you're driving in traffic or whatever, just pay attention to your thoughts a little bit more, and see what comes up. There's going to be a story that when things get hard, boom, boom, it's automatic. Boom, it's your autopilot. And for me, it was this is too hard. I can't do this. This is too hard. I can't do this. This is too hard. So that's what I believed about myself. And that's what I saw everywhere I went. But when I became aware that day on the bed that I had been saying this to myself, I was like, oh, this can't be helping me. So I made a commitment to myself, and this was just a self experiment, really. I just kind of had to play around with it. And I was just like, you know what? Every time I hear myself say I can't do it, I'm going to just reframe that story to the exact opposite, which is, no, I'll figure it out. I can do this. I'll figure it out. I can do this. And at
And so
first, it was like,
when you did that, I know that you're in the middle of the story, but what happened to you? The reason why I'm jumping in right here is because I hear a lot of times people are like, okay, well, I'm going to start telling myself this affirmation, and my body doesn't really feel into that.
yeah.
So curious around, like, were you able to feel into that? Like, how did you get your body and your mind to actually become in tune together to actually create the reality that is now?
So there's two things here. So number one, like for those of you that know Saturday Night Live with Stuart Smalley and his affirmations in the mirror, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, you're worth it, right? Like I know people that have all of these affirmations, but if you don't really believe the affirmation, it's just an exercise in futility. It doesn't really work. And there's another saying out there called "fake it till you make it" that drives me absolutely crazy. And as much as I hate to admit it, there's a little bit of that. There was a little bit of that. I didn't feel confident. I didn't believe yet that I could do it. But here's the thing. If we go back to Joe Dispenza, we can actually trick our brain through practice. So, for example, my shot in basketball has been off. And so, what have I been telling myself? It'll come back. What's the inherent meaning of that? It's gone. It'll come back. It's gone. It'll come back. It's gone. That's what I was telling myself. And I was like, this is what I'm working on right now. So I'm still working on it. So I started telling myself, you're a good shooter. You got this. You're a good shooter. You got this. You're shooting well. You're shooting well. You're shooting well. You're shooting well. Do I believe it yet? I'm getting there. But you know what? I'm creating a new belief. I'm creating a new belief. And then when I make a shot, I'm like, yep, there it is. And when I miss them, I'm like, that's just part of the game. When I make it, I'm like, yep, there it is. And when I miss it, that's just part of the game. So it's kind of awkward and feels funny. at first. But remember, a belief is just a story that we tell ourselves over and over and over again. It always amazes me when I go up and I speak in front of crowds or I listen to somebody else speak and I ask people, what'd you get out of that? And the answer is always different. Why? Because everybody is telling a different story in their head. There are different places in their life. They're picking up on different pieces and aspects. What we focus on is what we create. So if I'm going to focus on my shots coming sometime in the future because I don't have it, it's not here. But if I focus on I'm a good shooter, my shot is improving already. I'm noticing a change in it because I am reprogramming my belief that I don't have a shot right now.
So if somebody out there is listening to this and they're like, I'm just not getting the clients. I don't have the sales. Like, how can they begin to tell the story differently? And what I'm hearing is, with the basketball example, that there was kind of this lack. Like, you had sort of an internal dialogue around lack.
I was focused on the thing that I didn't have. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for someone out there who's wanting to make more money in real estate, saying I'm not making the sales, or I can't do this, it's really about getting into your head and really hearing the dialogue that's happening
Right.
within.
And reading between the lines.
And reading between the
because
lines.
because me saying my shot is coming back, kind of, it's not like super negative. I'm not saying, oh, I suck. But if you read between the lines, what I'm really saying is it's gone. It's missing. I don't have it. And so some keywords, some things that you might focus on. If your business isn't where you want it to be, and you want to be selling more houses, you want to be making more real estate, you want to have a good clip of business, but not be burned out, right? You've got too much business and you don't want to be burned out. You know, the things that I catch typically are I need, so I need more deals. That inherent, okay, maybe that's true, but inherently what that means is I don't have any deals. I should be, you know, I shouldn't be so stressed out. Okay, what are you focused on? Stressed out. So so that's why I don't like talking about battling burnout. It's the buzzword, it's the word that people go, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." What I like talking about is resiliency. And so anyway, think about, so it's the I need tos, I want tos, I should be, I shouldn't be. Those kinds of terms, they're wishful thinking, or there is a lack of acceptance of the way things actually are in those statements. So that's kind of the cue of it
That's
should
your
be,
red
should be.
flag.
That's the red flag, right? And it's in that moment that you go, yeah, I need to sell more houses. And I promise you, if you're saying that in your head, in your heart, you're feeling, I don't have the ability to sell more houses. And that's where the discrepancy begins to grow. And that's where we feel the pain. And so it's in that time that you don't necessarily have to believe right now that you can sell more houses. All you have to believe is that you have the ability to do something about it.
The
I
belief.
had no idea how I was going to fix my head and my emotions. Zero. I had no idea how I was going to turn the corner in 2020 and be able to keep it together without my head exploding. I had no idea. But what I did know was I was going to figure it out. And so if you need to sell more houses, or if you don't want to be so stressed out, great. Welcome. Welcome to acceptance of you're not where you want to be. The question is, where do you want to be? So I still want to make money in real estate, but I don't want to be burned out. Great. Great. So every time you hear yourself saying, I'm so stressed out, I'm burned out, I'm stressed out, reframe that story. Maybe it is, maybe it's, hey, this is the time to grind. Let's lean in and have fun. Let's feel what it feels like to be in the grind. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's, oh, this is awesome. This is a turning point for me. It means that I get to simplify my life. right? So it's about taking your story and then finding a new story to backfill it with. And I think one of the hardest parts for people is sometimes that's hard to do on our own, which is why Allison and I, you're going to hear us a lot saying, schedule a strategy call with us. Schedule a strategy call with us. It's free. We're not here to sell you anything. It is a strategy call to help you brainstorm and discover for yourself, what it is that might move the needle for you, so that you can live a more fulfilling life, sell more homes, make more money, and not be so stressed out all the time. There is a path to
And
create that.
yes, and I believe it also gets a little easier. I'm not going to say that we don't come against pitfalls and potholes. And, Dan and I have been working on resiliency for years now. And there are definitely times where we come up against a wall and it's like, oh my gosh, this is really tough. I think the thing though is that, like you were saying, it's a lot. Maybe easier isn't the best word for that, but I do believe that there is something about the bounce back that happens a lot quicker, or it's just like
Yeah.
flexibility. I mean, I think that's what resiliency also provides, is this idea of flexibility. And that's
Right.
kind of what I'm hearing when you're talking, Dan, about reframing. Is there's sort of a softness to all the different reframes that you've given today. Like, it's kind of like forgiveness around self. It's, when
Yeah.
we get into this place of like, oh, shoot, like I suck. Like we get into this really negative place, and that's very rigid and very harsh. And then when we reframe, it may not be the normal way of thinking. However, I'm hearing a lot of flexibility and a lot of grace. Like, I got this. It's all right. It's okay. There's a level of acceptance that's happening, and there's also kind of this like, all right, let's see what can happen. There's sort of this curiosity, I would say, in a way,
Yeah.
like what could happen maybe that could be different.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that word flexibility. And the fact of the matter is it does get easier. That's the cool part. The first time that you catch yourself in a story and you tell yourself the reframe, it's gonna feel like a square peg in a round hole. You're gonna be like, it's gonna feel like it's not working. But what's the only way to be able to jump higher or run faster or do anything or bench more weight or whatever? You got to get your reps in. You just got to get your reps in, and you build those muscles. And now 100 pounds is easy and 150 pounds is hard. Then 150 pounds is easy and 200 pounds is hard. That's exactly how our mind works too. At first it's like it's hard to talk to myself in an appropriate way. And then that's a little bit easier. But then you beat yourself up from something else, and then you reframe it, and that's kind of hard, but then that becomes easy. And so when you talk about flexibility, see, now I have a tool bag because I've done this on so many different fronts that I can go into my tool bag and be like, oh, I remember when I experienced something similar, and this is what I did to get through it. And now that thing that would have been hard is easy because I've already worked through it once. And so now it's easy to work through that. So I can focus on the big monster over here. And then I figure out that big monster. And then there's another big monster. But all of this stuff is easy. And so it does get easier over time. It does get easier as we put our reps in. So if you're in that spot where you don't know what to do about it, I'll say it again. Welcome. You're in the right place, because that's where it begins. And you tell yourself the story and it feels weird, and it gets easier, and you catch it again, and you catch it again, and you catch it again, and you catch it again. And next thing you know, that belief that you had, it's dead. You have a new belief. You replace it with a new belief. It just takes consistency, dedication, and a desire to get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, it, so yeah, I'm just curious about like, well, maybe not curious, but I'm tying this back to like the brain. I mean, scientifically, we know that the brain has flexibility and has the ability to change. And so these rooted beliefs that we have are like highways. And then when we start having we implement a new belief or a new thought, it's like the brain's like, wait, hold on, I don't know about this. But if we are doing our reps, we're every day we are going to the gym and we're consistently working out or whatever it is, the actual pathway within our brain gets like a highway. And then it's like, oh, I've been down this highway before. And so just to kind of tie in like this, I'm a nerd around the science and the brain. And so,
Well,
it's,
yeah.
I think it kind of, it gives people, I hope, for those that are listening, like, it kind of backs it as well. It's like, we're not just talking about this idea around beliefs. There is real scientific proven evidence of these, when we can create a thought over and over and over, that belief pattern becomes a highway within our brain.
Yeah, and we'll shoot an entire episode just talking about that. I mean, I love talking about that
Neuroplasticity.
kind of stuff. I mean, I've got, yeah, neuroplasticity and our ability to literally rewire our brain in a way that we want to do. I mean, that's what Joe Dispenza's work at the heart is really all about, and why it's so powerful. So, one of the other things that we want to do on the show, um, not well. So let's just talk about that really quick. So moving forward, we're going to wrap up today's episode. We can continue talking about this forever, but we're going to keep coming back to a lot of these same concepts. But one of the things that we're going to be doing on this show is we're going to be bringing guests on to share their stories of resiliency. We're going to go deep with them, and we're going to talk to them like, all right, tell us about the dark. Tell us about how you pushed through. We're not going to be talking about how perfect they are, the perfect resiliency beings, and no, we're going to share their ideas. We're going to find out what it looks like when we're in the muck, and we're going to figure out what it takes to get out of there. We're going to talk to people about that. We're going to bring people on, and we're going to do live strategy calls with them on the air on this podcast, where they're not sure if they can keep going. Maybe they're thinking about leaving the industry. Maybe they're totally overwhelmed and stressed out. Like, great, let's have you on and talk to you and go through a strategy call together and see if we can find some strategies to help you move forward. So those are things that we're going to be doing on the show. And by the way, if you fit either one of those categories, please hit us up. Our information is all over the place. It's in the comments in this podcast. Hit us up. We'd love to have you on the show. One other thing that we're also going to be doing on this podcast is kind of giving you guys options of other places to learn about this stuff, because the stuff that Allison and I are talking about here, this is stuff that was taught to us from other people. And so we are not the resource. We are a resource. And so Joe Dispenza, if you don't know him, look him up.
Ed
He's got,
Milet.
yeah, Ed Milet. These guys have books, they've got podcasts, they've got free content online. If this is something that's interesting to you, go check that out. And you'll hear us talk about lots of different people as we go through this podcast. So that's another one of our objective, is to give you actionable items that you can implement today, but also give you resources that you can go and discover more on your own. So, by the way, as we're wrapping up here, and then Allison, I'll let you kind of put a bow on your piece of it. If you're enjoying this content, please, please, please do us a solid and subscribe, like, make a comment, let us know what we're doing that's working. Constructive feedback, constructive keyword, is always good too, but we want to hear from you guys. We want to know what we're doing that's working and not working, so we can continue to create content that's actually going to help move the needle for you. So please plug into everything we're doing. There's a link in the bio or in the comments where you can schedule a call directly with us right through Calendly and do your own strategy call, just a private call with us if that's what you would like to do as well. So with that, Allison, any final thoughts on today's episode?
Well, resiliency is a skill, and it's something that, like we've talked about, is something that is a practice. And I know for a fact, just from Dan and I experimenting through all of this, that it really can lead to more happiness, more joy, more flexibility, more money. It's more about, the real estate is really an avenue or a vehicle to the life that we're living. And we want to create more freedom for ourselves. And that's really what resiliency does. And so it's not just a one-time thing. This is really, it's a practice. It's a lifestyle. And if you're curious and you're like, you know what, I could be living a better life. Like, inside that there's something more, like you're good enough. and there's something more out there for you, this is a great podcast to come listen to again. So I hope to have you guys join us again for the next episode.
Yeah, thank you. And the last little piece that I'll just say is that practice inherently means that we're not perfect.
Beautiful.
The saying is practice makes perfect. I call BS on that one because there's no such thing. So just know that as perfect as I might look and seem, I am not. There's still a lot of work to be done for all of
Always.
us. There's always
Always.
room to improve. And so if you're not perfect, once again, welcome. Welcome to the club. Let's get better
Glad to have
together.
you here.
Yeah, let's get better together. And so thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope you have a fantastic day. Here's to your journey in our world, my friends. We will see you soon.
Bye.